Just wanted to do a quick discussion about logical fallacies. We talked about logic last week, and this is the way in which we reason, the way in which we come to understandings. Logical fallacies are errors we make in that logic. And so I want to talk about a few different ways we can make errors in our logic, and then we'll come back to this later on. The first one is what we call the slippery slope argument. This is when an argument that because one thing happened, others are bound to as well, even if there's no correlation. We'll note in all of the different types of logic, they're based upon correlation, cause and effect. One thing is correlated to the other. When we do A, B happens. Or the correlation between two things that are analogous or similar. Because something happened with A, something similar will happen with B because the two situations are similar. So a lot of this is about correlation. So the slippery slope argument is that because one thing happened, others are bound to as well. We actually hear this all the time. Once they legalize marijuana, everyone will start doing heroin and other hard drugs. There's no evidence to show there's actually a clear correlation between doing marijuana and later doing heroin. However, it's a common argument that we hear. So that's what we call the slippery slope. So, the gambler's fallacy. The gambler's fallacy is the belief that because something happened before, it will happen again, or that because it happened once, it will never happen again. This actually comes quite true at the moment. The last time we heard the fire drill, it turned out to be a false alarm. We don't need to worry about it now. There have been fire alarms 4 days in a row at Prairie State in the past week. What do we see? People don't even want to leave the building anymore. It's the belief that because it didn't happen before, it won't happen now. Likewise, it could be the exact opposite. Gamblers really believe, of course, if they haven't rolled the 7 in craps in a while, they're due, even though we know that it's completely random. The fallacist's fallacy. This is the argument that because something isn't proven false, it must be true, or vice versa. We hear this all the time. This is a favorite argument of the Republicans, actually. Since no one's been able to show that human activity causes global warming, there's no reason for us to do anything about it. And if you actually listen to the Republicans speak about energy policy, they'll say this over and over again. We don't have conclusive evidence that humans cause global warming, therefore we're not going to change our energy use patterns. Of course, this is false logic. Merely because it hasn't been proven true does not mean it is false. It means it simply hasn't been proven true. Keep in mind, gravity is only a theory. The bandwagon fallacy. This is the argument that because everyone is doing something, it's the right thing to do or the right thing to believe. We hear this on advertisements all the time. 4 out of 5 moms agree that Skippy peanut butter is the best. It doesn't mean it's the best. It merely means that some study shows that 4 out of 5 moms think it is. Obviously, it's the notion of the bandwagon. If everyone else thinks this is the right way to go, this is the way you should go as well. The weak analogy. I talked about the fact that analogical reasoning is one of the types of reasoning, and these are all fundamentally types of analogies. This is poor correlation between the situation, the individual thing that's going on right now, and the rule we ascribe to it. The notion there is that there's a poor correlation between one situation and the other. In other words, a very common phrase, if they can put astronauts on the moon, I don't know why they can't make my cell phone work inside Prairie State. While both of these things are true, they are not correlated to each other. Frankly, them putting astronauts on the moon doesn't actually make cell phones work better, and it doesn't give anyone any more information about cell phone technology, so there's no correlation between A and B in this situation. The ad hominem attack, this is Latin for against the man. The argument that because a person who argues something is wrong or bad or what have you, anything he or she believes is wrong. That's a program Blagojevich started, so it's clearly bad for Illinois. Of course, people believe that Blagojevich is evil, therefore anything he did must have been bad as well. The naturalist fallacy, and this actually pairs with the moralist fallacy, which will come next. The naturalist fallacy is the argument that because something doesn't currently exist, it never will. Since homeless people can't hold jobs down, we need to provide them with homes because they'll never be able to work. The Republicans at least argue that this is a favorite thing that the Democrats say. Well, because these people can't really work, we want to give them a check. This is the Republicans' consistent argument. The moralistic fallacy, on the other hand, is an argument based upon the way things should be, not necessarily the way they are. Because everyone has the ability to work, even if they're disabled in some way, there's no reason for welfare or help for the homeless. After all, they're choosing not to work. Both of these have flaws in logic, because one ignores the way things are, the other one ignores the fact that things can change. And that's the problem with these two fallacies. If you haven't figured out yet, most politicians commit virtually every one of these logical fallacies when they speak. The false dilemma, one of my favorites, because I always hear this from my students. This is the argument that only two options could possibly work. If I don't ace this midterm, I'm dropping the class because there's no way I'll get an A. Obviously, the two options here, ace the midterm or drop the class. The option they're not considering, that they could stick with the class and accept a B or a C. Okay, very common thing to hear, though. The false dilemma sort of suggesting, well, you either have to do this or this. None of those other things are even options. The cum hoc fallacy, I know it looks dirty. It's not. It's with this, then that, quite literally in the Latin. This is the argument that one thing caused another, when in reality the two things only happened at the same time. Because global warming there wasn't global warming before we started burning oil, it's clear that human activity is causing global warming. Liberals make this argument all the time, that because global warming started when we started burning oil, that human activity is obviously causing global warming. Well, that's not actually true. It could be completely unrelated climate change, which is what the Republicans generally argue. Both of these are inherently fallacies. There's more evidence out there than just that these two things happened at the same time. At the same time, this argument is false as well, because there's nothing more than these two things happening at the same time. So there's correlation between these two, we'd call it. They happen at the same time, but not necessarily causation. We don't know that one thing caused another. The straw man argument. The act of setting up your opposition is weaker than they are. The only evidence those who believe we have caused global warming is that we burned oil at the same time the temperature went up. That's not the only evidence that's out there. So claiming that that's the only evidence that's out there is committing the straw man fallacy. It's setting up your opposition is remarkably weak and having a weak argument, when in reality you're just not explaining the full argument that they have. All right, those are some basic ones. There's a lot more out there, but these are sort of some of the core ones. One of your papers is actually going to ask you to think about logical fallacies in in the essays we're reading. So keep these in mind as we work our way through the rest of the semester.